Hey everybody, welcome to the ExoCast News. We're going to go through our breaking news headlines today for June 4th, 2026. So the first one we got is punchng.com writes an article that the U.S. pledged support to embattled Bolivian president. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke Thursday to Bolivian President Rodrigo Paz and promised assistance in dealing with protests paralyzing the South American country, a statement said. The United States is ramping up emergency assistance and logistics operations support in Bolivia to help those facing acute food and medical shortages due to illegal roadblocks intended to destabilize Bolivian society. Spokesperson Tommy Pigott said in a statement that reaffirmed Washington's unwavering commitment to Bolivia's democracy. For more than a month, a widespread protest movement led by Bolivian farmers, workers, miners, transit operators, and teachers have demanded solutions to a crippling economic crisis, leading to calls for the resignation of the center-right Paz. According to Mai Nguyen and Yuji Nita with Nikkei Asia, Vietnam pushes financial hub ambitions via maritime aviation finance moves. The government-backed VIFC still in early stage as the country seeks to capture more trade value. Nicholas Vinocourt with Politico writes, Chinese firms that help Russia are next for EU sanctions. The latest move likely to feed into rising tensions between Brussels and Beijing. The EU's Foreign Policy Service is pushing to sanction 4 Chinese companies it accuses of supporting Russia's war against Ukraine, according to documents seen by Politico. The 4 firms likely to be included in the latest package of sanctions due to be approved at a gathering of EU foreign ministers next week assist Russia's shadow fleet, providing chemicals for Russia's military and delivering components Moscow uses to build attack drones, officials said. The move is likely to feed into rising tensions between Brussels and Beijing as European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen seeks the backing of EU capitals for a major crackdown on subsidized Chinese imports. Last week, China said it would take resolute countermeasures and effective steps to safeguard its own interests if the EU imposed additional trade restrictions. Dasha Burns, Maya Ward, Aaron Pellish, and Josh Gerstein with Politico wrote, Trump is expected to nominate Todd Blanche to be Attorney General. The president's former defense attorney has been serving in the position on an acting basis since April. President Donald Trump is expected to nominate Todd Blanche to be Attorney General, the position he's held on an acting basis since April, administration officials said Wednesday. How do you think this will change from Pam Bondi to Todd Blanche? Let me know in the comments. The president could nominate Blanche as soon as Wednesday night. 2 officials who were granted anonymity to discuss private conversations told Politico. Trump mentioned the nomination at a Rose Garden dinner on Wednesday, one of the people said. Another official said the president has already spoken to Blanche about it. The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Trump, however, has been known to tease announcements only to delay or change his mind at the last minute. If the nomination, which was first reported by CNN, is confirmed by the Senate, Blanche would permanently replace former Attorney General Pam Bondi, who was forced out of her role in April after a rocky tenure in which she presided over the administration's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein investigative files. The White House did not confirm the pending nomination. According to Jessica Parker, Berlin correspondent, and Toby Mann, Germany blames Russia for a bitter defeat in UN Security Council bid. Germany's foreign minister says support for Ukraine and Israel may have cost votes after Berlin failed to secure a rotating spot on the UN Security Council. Johann Wadepool described losing out to Portugal and Austria as a bitter defeat after a vote on which countries would become one of the 5 new members of the council was held on Wednesday evening. Africa Hub on the X platform wrote that the United States has signed a major 15-year agreement to source rare earth minerals from Greenland's Tanbreeze project, significantly cutting its future dependence on supplies from Africa and China. Tanbreeze is rich in heavy rare earth elements like dysprosium and terbium, which are essential for American defense systems and extremely scarce outside of China. The deal will help the U.S. comply with upcoming Pentagon regulations that limit the use of Chinese-origin rare earths while reducing supply chain vulnerabilities. Realloys is currently developing a fully non-Chinese rare earth supply chain across North America, strengthening the independence of U.S. defense manufacturing. According to Reuters, Poland is to ban phones in schools and restrict access to pornography. Poland wants to ban under 16s from using mobile phones in schools from September 1st and plans to introduce stricter age verification rules to access pornography, Prime Minister Donald Tusk said on Tuesday. Countries including the Netherlands, South Korea, and Italy have banned smartphones in schools due to concerns over their impact on concentration and behavior. Others have banned or are considering banning children's access to social media. The proposed bill would ban children aged 7 to 15 from using phones on school premises, including breaks between classes, and give schools legal basis for creating deposits to store phones. A separate bill proposed by the Minister for Digital Affairs would impose new obligations on websites offering pornography so as to restrict children's access. The age verification mechanism cannot be based on age declarations, biometric data, or data about the user's online activity, but must be designed in accordance with privacy and personal data protection requirements, the government said earlier in a justification to the bill. Now, a counter argument to this is that a lot of these age verifications are easily exploitable by hackers and is also detrimental to data activity or data harvesting. Another article from Reuters writes that Ukrainian company tests a ballistic missile for air defense system. Ukraine's largest missile and drone maker, Firepoint, has conducted a flight test of a ballistic missile that will serve as the foundation of a project to create a missile air defense system, the company's CEO, Irina Turek, said on Wednesday. Recently, we conducted an extremely important test, a fully controlled maneuvering flight of the FP7.X missile, which will form the basis of the future Freya anti-ballistic interceptor, Turek wrote on X. The FP7X is the interceptor variant of Firepoint's FP7 ballistic missile, which is currently in development, and which the company says will also be able to attack ground targets. Firepoint's co-owner, Dennis Stielierman, told Reuters in April that it was in talks with unnamed European companies to launch a new air defense system capable of downing supersonic ballistic missiles by the end of next year, creating a low-cost alternative to the U.S.-made Patriot. The missile itself is only one component of an air defense system. Analysts say its most complex parts are the ground radar network and the targeting system in the missile. Chelsea Goad with Space.com writes, "The mirror passed with flying colors. NASA just took its last look at the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope before its launch. The next time we see Roman, it will be in Florida readying for launch. We just took one final look at NASA's Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope, and now it's officially ready for launch." Roman, NASA's newest flagship space telescope, is set to launch from the agency's Kennedy Space Center in Florida as soon as August 30th, after NASA announced that the telescope was complete back in April. Engineers completed their final inspection of the telescope's primary mirror. With this critical assessment now successfully checked off the list, the Roman team is now preparing to ship the telescope to the Florida launch site. Roman's 7.9-foot wide primary mirror will collect and focus light from objects across the cosmos. This mirror is absolutely essential to the telescope's ultimate success. Ann Trafton with MIT News wrote that MIT chemists designed impact-resistant plastics. Introducing weaker bonds into polystyrene and rubber helps these materials dissipate energy, making them more resistant to destructive forces. With help from a novel cross-linked molecule, MIT chemists have shown they can substantially improve the ballistic impact resistance of common polymers, including polystyrene and a type of rubber used to make shoe soles. Polystyrene is a hard, glassy polymer that is used to make many types of plastic containers, such as bottles and mugs, as well as disposable cutlery. It's also found in coatings for electronic devices, and its foam form is the basis for styrofoam and other lightweight packaging. While sometimes labeled with recycling code number 6, polystyrene is difficult to recycle and rarely collected for reuse in the U.S. To make the polymer more resistant to sudden impact, the MIT team added weak bonds scattered throughout the material as crosslinks, which allows the material to dissipate energy much more effectively under deformations. When struck by a projectile, these weak bonds selectively break at the site of impact to open up pathways for enhanced energy absorption. The researchers found that this approach can also fortify butadiene styrene rubber, and they are now investigating whether it will also work for other types of polymers, such as latex or the rubber that's used to make tires. And I will say the full article is much more interesting and has more further development, so I'd go and check that article out. A lot of these articles are going to be short form. If you want the full article, please go and check them out. Ira Dugal with Reuters writes, India is to drop capital gains tax for foreign investors in government bonds. India plans to scrap capital gains tax on foreign portfolio investments in government securities, which could help boost such inflows, a source familiar with the matter said on Thursday. The South Asian nation is looking to attract foreign capital to counteract pressure on its rupee currency, which has weakened more than 5% since the start of the year, squeezed by higher oil prices and foreign portfolio outflows in equities. The Economic Times newspaper was the first to report Wednesday's cabinet approval of the plan. The finance ministry did not immediately respond to a Reuters email seeking comment. India's benchmark bond yield eased 1 basis point to 7.01% in opening trade, although it was not immediately clear when the plan would take effect. Any tax easing should help flows at the margin, said Madhavi Arora, chief economist at MK Global Financial Services. Foreign investors are subject to a long-term capital gains tax of 12.5% on listed shares and bonds held longer than 12 months. A withholding tax of 20% they pay on interest earned in government bonds may also be removed, the source said. India stands more or less in line with global standards on equity taxation, but is among the few countries that tax non-resident flows into debt, said the source, who sought anonymity as the decision is confidential and not yet made public. Foreign investors have maintained net positive flows into Indian government debt this year, investing $1.4 billion, but nearly $28 billion has been pulled from equity markets. So that would be huge news for people trying to buy debt or bonds from their company as well. Solomon Econim with Business Insider Africa writes that the U.S. moves to block market access for 8 African countries following comprehensive global forced labor investigations. Trump's latest trade proposal could hit exports from 8 African countries, with new tariffs marking a new phase in Washington's effort to tie market access to labor standards and supply chain compliance. The U.S. has proposed new 12.5% tariffs on exports from 8 African countries due to concerns over forced labor practices. The targeted countries are Algeria, Angola, Egypt, Libya, Mauritania, Morocco, Nigeria, and South Africa. This measure is part of a wider investigation by the USTR involving 60 economies to assess compliance with labor standards and supply chains. Unlike previous tariffs targeting trade imbalances, this proposal specifically focuses on forced labor-related compliance. According to CBS LA News, a man with dual U.S.-Iranian citizenship was arrested by the FBI for violating technology sanctions against Iran. Jamshid Gomi of Newport Coast is charged with conspiracy to violate the International Emergency Economic Powers Act by acquiring sophisticated U.S.-origin networking, security, and encryption equipment and smuggling them for Iranian customers, stating that this could have made its way to Iranian nuclear technology. According to CTV News, a new program in Edmonton will see underused churches turned into affordable housing. Under a $2 million grant program called the Faithlands Affordable Housing Incentive, eligible organizations can get up to $137,000 to help with the cost of planning. Xavier Martinez with the Wall Street Journal wrote that Coinbase founder's longevity startup is tripling in value. Now worth $3.1 billion, New Limit plans to test its RNA therapy in alcohol-related liver disease patients next year. New Limit, a longevity startup co-founded by Coinbase Coin, 1.03% increase today, Coinbase Coin, 1.03% increase. CEO Brian Armstrong completed a fundraising that brings its valuation to $3.1 billion. The company said more than triple what it was a year ago, on growing enthusiasm for drugs that promise to slow or reverse aging. In a funding round that closed Friday, investors poured $435 million into New Limit, which is focused on reversing cellular aging but doesn't have any products on the market yet. Its first drug for alcohol-related liver disease will begin human studies next year. New Limit is one of many tech billionaire-backed longevity startups. In 2022, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman put $180 million into Retro Biosciences, which is developing drugs to rejuvenate aging cells, and said last month it was valued at $1.8 billion. Altos Labs, reportedly funded by Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, launched with $3 billion in 2022 and has raised nearly double that in total. The hope is that these companies discover drugs that halt or even reverse the biological course of aging, which would be a completely new way of using prescription medication. Prior attempts at developing drugs to combat aging haven't succeeded, and the Food and Drug Administration, which regulates prescription drugs in the U.S., doesn't recognize aging as a disease. New Limit will start by targeting a specific illness to potentially win approval for drugs that could ultimately be used in wider ways. Space Daily writes, in early June 2026, the X-59 is expected to cross Mach 1 at 43,000 feet, the first sharp-proof point in NASA's 50-year attempt to turn an overland sonic boom into a certifiable thump. The X-59 is expected to cross Mach 1 for the first time in early June 2026 at about 43,000 feet, not as a speed stunt, but as the opening move in a regulatory case NASA has been assembling since the United States restricted routine civil supersonic flight over land in the early 1970s. The aircraft is built to do something narrower and stranger than fly fast. It's built to make a sonic boom arrive on the ground as a quieter pressure signature, the soft thump at the center of NASA's Quest mission. That is why the first supersonic run matters. It begins the part of the program where the airplane stops being a shape on a ramp and becomes a flying argument about what the law should measure. NASA says the X-59 team expects the aircraft to fly faster than Mach 1 for the first time during a series of test flights in early June 2026 at approximately 43,000 feet and above 630 miles per hour. That first step is deliberately conservative. The milestone is to cross the barrier, gather data, and keep widening the flight envelope rather than jump immediately to the full mission profile. The larger target comes after that. NASA says the aircraft will later fly a mission conditions profile at Mach 1.4, about 925 miles per hour, at roughly 55,000 feet, the speed and altitude needed for the eventual community demonstrations over the United States. So that's really cool. According to Rod McGurk with AP News, the new prime minister says the Solomon Islands will review its secretive security treaty with China. The Solomon Islands will review its secretive security treaty with China, the South Pacific nation's new Prime Minister Matthew Whale said Wednesday. The pact struck in 2022 with the Solomons' then Prime Minister Manasseh Sogavare created fears in the United States and among allies, including Australia, that it would allow the Chinese Navy to build a base in the South Pacific. Before Whale became Prime Minister in a parliamentary vote May 15th, he had called for the detail of the treaty to be made public. Megan Cerullo with CBS News writes, American Airlines suspends 6 routes because of high jet fuel costs. American Airlines has joined the list of carriers temporarily cutting routes as the ongoing war in Iran drives up jet fuel costs. So a lot of airplane companies are going out as well. The airline told CBS News on Wednesday that it has adjusted schedules for selective routes in August and September. An American Airlines spokesperson said the changes are in response to elevated fuel costs and that the affected routes will not be permanently cut. American is not suspending any routes indefinitely as part of this adjustment, the spokesperson said in a statement. The affected routes being temporarily cut are Los Angeles to Cleveland, from LA to Columbus, LA to Pittsburgh, LA to Washington Dulles, Charlotte to Ontario, and Charlotte to Sacramento. Jet fuel accounts for roughly 25 to 30% of an airline's overall costs, according to industry analysts. The ongoing Iran war has choked global oil supplies, driving up carriers' operating costs. In some cases, airlines have raised fares or tacked on jet fuel surcharges to ticket prices, while also suspending unprofitable routes. American Airlines said it will accommodate customers with tickets for flights on the affected routes, either by rebooking them on a different flight or offering a refund. According to Stephen Castle with New York Times, Alex Younger, former head of Britain's MI6, has died at 62 years of age. As director of the espionage agency from 2014 to 2020, he confronted a range of threats, including international terrorism and an emboldened Russia. Alex Younger, an urbane but steely career intelligence officer who, from 2014 to 2020, led Britain's espionage agency MI6, where he promoted the use of technology while confronting rising threats from Islamic State terrorism and a revanchist Russia, has died. He was 62. Blaise Matrawelli, the current head of MI6, said the cause was cancer. No further details were immediately available. For 6 years, Mr. Younger was Britain's top international spy, sitting at the apex of the country's overseas intelligence gathering operations, attending its National Security Council, and advising 3 prime ministers. British spy chiefs typically hold the top job for 5 years, and Mr. Younger's slightly extended tenure made him the longest-serving head of MI6 in half a century. From his office overlooking the River Thames, where he was known as C after the first chief of MI6, Mansfield Smith Cumming, Mr. Younger confronted a range of threats, including international terrorism and an emboldened Russia. Despite his impeccable establishment background and patrician demeanor, he sought to demystify the work of MI6, also known as the Secret Intelligence Service, or SIS, and to broaden recruitment by an organization popularized by fictional British spies like James Bond and John le Carré's George Smiley. Jacelyn Diaz with NPR wrote that a gun control group had sued the ATF over records release. A major gun control group is suing the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives and the Justice Department over the federal agency's refusals to release documents and other information about who the largest sellers of crime guns in the U.S. are. Brady is demanding in its lawsuit filed in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia this morning that the court compel the ATF to release information related to what the agency calls Demand Letter 2S. These are letters ATF sends to gun dealers and other sellers that have been identified as selling at least 25 or more guns recovered at crime scenes in a calendar year. According to 12 News, Phoenix is breaking tourism records. A new report shows the hotel industry's impact in bringing in billions in tax revenue for the valley. A staff writer with mining.com writes, the Department of Energy awards $67 million to Element USA, Colorado School of Mines for rare earth processing plant. Element USA, in partnership with Colorado School of Mines, has announced a $67 million award from the U.S. Department of Energy to advance the design, construction, commissioning, and operation of a rare earth element processing facility in St. John the Baptist Parish, Louisiana. The award builds on Element USA's ongoing $29.9 million project with the Department of War, focusing on gallium and scandium recovery and commercialization. These programs, the company said, materially advance Element USA's plan to onshore critical mineral supply chains by scaling a proven proprietary process that converts bauxite residue, the byproduct of alumina refining, into pig iron and a diversified suite of critical minerals and REEs. Ed White with AP News wrote that 2 scientists were charged with bringing deactivated monkeypox virus into the U.S. and lying to authorities. 2 scientists at a U.S. government lab were charged with smuggling vials of deactivated monkeypox virus into the country from Africa and lying about it during interviews with investigators at a Michigan airport, authorities said Tuesday. A criminal complaint was unsealed in federal court in Detroit against Vincent Munster, who is chief of the virus ecology section at Rocky Mountain Laboratories in Hamilton, Montana, and Claude Quay, who works with him. Munster and Quay were stopped at Detroit Metropolitan Airport in January after a flight from Paris and 9 days in the Republic of Congo. An outbreak of the monkeypox disease has been linked to more than 2,000 deaths in Congo, a vast region in Central Africa, though a 2-year outbreak was declared over in April. According to Clash reports on X, Turkey's military received its first delivery of the IHA-230, a domestically developed supersonic air-launched ballistic missile made by Roketsan. The quantity was classified. The IHA-230 has a range of 150-plus kilometers, reaches Mach 4+, carries a 42-kilogram warhead, and is designed to be launched from Bayraktar AKI-NCI drones against high-value targets like radar sites, command centers, and armored vehicles. PBS News on X wrote that the almost 50 U.S. embassies and consulates that are processing visa applications will be reduced to 20 in the coming weeks, according to 3 U.S. officials and an internal memo obtained by the Associated Press. Olena Mukina with Euromaidan Press writes that the American defense company Red Cat announced serial production of a copy of Ukraine's Magra V7 and says it's their own development. The U.S. military now wants the same capability. Ukraine built it first. American defense firm Red Cat has launched full-rate production of a maritime drone variant 7, which began as a partnership with the Ukrainian manufacturer of the Magra V7. The Blue Ops subsidiary now describes the platform as designed, built, and assembled in the U.S. and credits the design to its own engineers, Defense Express reports. In May 2025, the company openly acknowledged that it was entering the maritime drone market through a partnership with a company whose drones had logged over 10,000 hours of operating time in live combat missions and had conducted dozens of successful kinetic engagements against enemy assets, more than any navy since World War II. This language that left no doubt the partner was Ukraine's intelligence-affiliated Magra builder. By the time full-rate production was announced on 29th of May 2026, public materials credited Blue Ops engineers and emphasized the U.S. origin of the build. Vladislav V. with Military NYI Satellite captures unidentified Chinese submarine with unusual design. A satellite imagery has captured a previously unknown Chinese submarine featuring a new design that lacks a traditional sail or a conning tower. This was reported by researcher H.I. Sutton in a naval news analysis. Since there is no official information about the submarine, assessments of its purpose and capabilities are currently based on sat imagery and expert analysis. The submarine was spotted in images dated May 31st and June 1st, moored near a barge outside the Jiangnan shipyard in Shanghai. Although the shipyard is primarily known for building large surface combatants, it also produces non-nuclear submarines. Mary Cunningham, Richard Escobedo, Jennifer Jacobs, Sarah Cook with CBS News wrote that Trump announces $700 million investment in coal plants in California export terminal. The U.S. is stepping up its investment in coal as President Trump doubles down on his commitment to bolster the fossil fuel industry. During an event on Thursday, Mr. Trump announced that his administration would commit $700 million in funding for coal plants and a new export terminal. Today, we're taking historic action to bring down the price of energy and the cost of living for all Americans with the power of clean, beautiful coal, Mr. Trump said from the Oval Office, where he announced the new funding initiative. If you look at China, if you look at so many of the successful countries, they're using coal, he added. If you look at some of the real great failures countries, they're using wind. The new investment in the coal industry was first reported by Bloomberg. Mr. Trump will invoke the Defense Production Act, a Cold War-era law that gives the U.S. president emergency authority over domestic industries to distribute $75 million for a new coal export terminal in Oakland, California, and $425 million to support 13 existing plants across 10 states, those being West Virginia, Kentucky, North Carolina, Indiana, Tennessee, Arkansas, Arizona, Oklahoma, North Dakota, and Wisconsin. The New York Times reported that Europe wants to be less reliant on American technology, and here's the plan. The 27-nation European Union outlined how it hopes to expand the region's data centers, semiconductors, and cloud computing capabilities. So if you want the full article, please go look at the New York Times for that one. Brian Spiegel, I'm hoping I'm saying that right, says that China is using LinkedIn to lure spy recruits in the West, U.S. and allies warn. Beijing is accused of expanding use of job sites to target military and government personnel. Chinese spies are increasingly posing as job recruiters on LinkedIn and other professional networking sites to recruit Western military and government officials or personnel. The U.S. and its intelligence allies warned this week, reinforcing calls for vigilance. The Five Eyes intelligence sharing network, which also includes Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand, alleged that Chinese military intelligence operatives were posing as employees of private consultancies, think tanks, and human resources firms looking to hire foreign policy or defense analysts. KPRC2 Click to Houston wrote that Texas leads nation in flood insurance cancellations as costs rise ahead of a hurricane season. And so insurance is crazy high here in Texas, and we would love to see some insurance companies dropping their rates. Allison Saldana with Dallas Morning News wrote that growing housing costs are driving North Texas foreclosures to a 6-year high. Foreclosures filings jumped 32% in 4 months, and newer homeowners are likely feeling the squeeze. Burgeoning affordability pressures in the North Texas region have pushed foreclosure filings to a 6-year high, according to the latest numbers from property data provider Adam. Recent first-time homeowners may be more likely to feel the squeeze, according to real estate experts, who attribute the rise in foreclosure activity to a normalization of the housing market amid increasing homeowner costs. Again, in Texas, a parasitic New World screwworm case was confirmed in a 3-week-old calf in La Pryor, or Zavala County, Texas. This marks the first U.S. detection since 1966. Officials established a quarantine in the infested zone to restrict the movement of warm-blooded animals without prior authorization. According to IGN on X, new data has revealed a steady decline in first-party PlayStation game sales over the past 5 years, although 2025's Ghost of Yote helped reverse the trend. So that's kind of interesting to me. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that we should have less outsourced jobs and more in America to combat this? How do you think there would be more customers for PlayStation there? The State Department released an interesting warning today. They said that people should exercise increased caution in the Middle East. Due to high tensions in the region, the security environment remains complex and can change quickly. They state, "We remind U.S. citizens in the Middle East of the continued need for caution and encourage them to monitor the news for breaking developments. The State Department travel advisories for Bahrain, Israel, the West Bank, Jordan, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates remain at level 3, which is reconsider travel. Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Gaza, and Yemen remain at level 4, which is do not travel. Potential for hostilities. U.S. citizens should know the location of the nearest shelter in the event of hostilities," they wrote. According to Omar Farouk with AP News, clashes erupted in Somalia's capital ahead of a planned anti-governmental rally. Somalia's opposition supporters and security forces clashed in the capital, Mogadishu, on Thursday for a second day ahead of a planned anti-government demonstration. No official casualty figures were immediately available from the clashes that prompted calls for restraint from the United Nations and the United States as the government and opposition traded blame for the violence. Residents reported heavy gunfire and explosions as fighting broke out in several neighborhoods Wednesday. The clashes underscore growing political tensions as disputes over Somalia's elections and the constitution have increasingly strained relations between the government and opposition leaders. Somalia is also fighting al-Shabaab militants while seeking to strengthen state institutions with support from international partners. Several buildings were hit by heavy gunfire and mortar shells during the clashes, with some catching fire. Gunfire subsided on Thursday afternoon following mediation efforts led by the director of the National Intelligence and Security Agency, who visited the area and held talks with former Prime Minister Hassan Ali Khayre. The discussions reportedly led to an agreement to halt the fighting. Instagram account popular.front reported that clashes broke out overnight in Mogadishu between government and opposition forces after former Prime Minister Hassan Ali Khayre claimed that troops loyal to the former president Hassan Sheikh Mohamud attacked his convoy ahead of planned anti-government protests. They also reported protests have erupted across Tirana over plans to construct a luxury resort backed by Jared Kushner, son-in-law of Donald Trump, which is married to Ivanka Trump, on Albania's Adriatic coast. Demonstrators accused the government of allowing development in protected coastal areas, including the Vajosa Narda wetlands and nearby Sazan Island. The protests have drawn thousands of people for several consecutive days as construction work has begun at parts of the site despite the ongoing manifestations. The Instagram account Russia, on, of course, Instagram, said that a tunnel will be built between Russia and the United States. The 86-kilometer route is planned to connect Chukotka and Alaska. The two countries are expected to sign an agreement on designing the transport tunnel as early as tomorrow. Kirill Dmitriev, the Russian president's special representative, told reporters about the project. So what do y'all think about that one? Kelly O'Donnell, Peter Nicholas, and Corky Simasko with NBC News wrote that former Trump advisor John Bolton is to plead guilty to retaining national security information. Bolton described the national security information in an electronic diary entry he shared with two members of his family, sources familiar with the matter said. John Bolton, who was national security advisor during President Donald Trump's first term and later became one of his fiercest critics, has agreed to plead guilty to one count of retaining national security information, two sources familiar with the matter said. As part of the agreement with federal prosecutors, Bolton will be arraigned again June 26th, at which point the judge will have up to 90 days to render a sentence, the sources said. Bolton faces a potential sentence of probation to 60 months in prison, the sources said. He has also agreed to pay $2.25 million in restitution, one of the sources said. Bolton described the national security information in question in an electronic diary entry that he shared with two members of his family, the two sources said. So there's no allegation that he took home any classified documents or that he leaked any documents or that he shared any documents with foreign adversaries, one of the sources said. According to Shafak News, Israel kills a senior Hamas security official in Gaza. The Israeli military announced on Thursday that it had killed senior members of Hamas's General Security Services in Gaza, describing the agency as a secret body responsible for protecting the movement's leadership. The Israeli army said its strikes in Gaza killed the deputy head of the service, Hassan Rabal-Abad, as well as senior figures Azam Amin, Abdullah Atta, and Mohammed Noman. Earlier in the day, health officials stated that Israeli airstrikes killed at least 10 Palestinians, including 5 members of the same family, in separate attacks across the Gaza Strip. A ceasefire reached in October 2025 through the mediation of U.S. President Donald Trump has failed to halt Israeli attacks on Gaza. Israel currently controls more than half of the enclave's territory, despite the truce remaining formally in effect. Indirect negotiations on implementing the second phase of the ceasefire agreement have stalled. The proposed phase includes the disarmament of Hamas and the withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Gaza Strip. According to Christian Baha with Baha News, The U.S. has sanctioned Cuban president. The United States Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control announced on Thursday that it added Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel to its sanctions list. The OFAC also added Diaz-Canel's wife, Liz Cuesta Pereza, and his stepson, Manuel Anido Cuesta, to the specially designated nationals and blocked persons lists. Additionally, the U.S. sanctioned former President Raul Castro's son, Alejandro Castro Espin, and grandson, Raul Alejandro Castro Calix. The Cuban Ministry of the Revolutionary Armed Forces was also included in the sanctions list. Shortly before the announcement, U.S. President Donald Trump insisted that Cuba would need regime change before Washington extends its full assistance to the Caribbean country. According to Kyodo News through the Japan Wire, Japan electronics firms Yamada Edion eye business integration. Yamada Holdings Company, Japan's largest consumer electronics retailer, and Edion Corp, another key player in the sector, are planning a business integration, a source familiar with the matter said Thursday. Under the envisioned merger, their combined sales would reach around 2.5 trillion yen, or $15.63 billion. They are considering setting up a holding company and putting the two retailers under its wing, the source said. The city of Pasadena, California, wrote last night that the U.S. military will be conducting a training exercise in northeast Pasadena until 1 a.m. During this time, you may hear limited helicopter activity, controlled explosions, and simulated weapons fire. Pasadena police will be assisting with pedestrian and vehicle safety in the immediate area. This event is not open to the public or media, so if you guys heard noises around that area during that time, that's probably what you heard. Keith King, after reading Rick Ellis's article with Forbes titled "The Use of AI Chatbots by Media Companies May Drive You Insane," wrote, "AI customer service may be creating new frustrations instead of solving old ones." For years, consumers complained about poor customer service from cable, telecommunications, and media companies. Many hoped that advances in artificial intelligence would improve the experience by providing faster responses, lower wait times, and more efficient problem resolution. However, this article argues that current AI-powered customer service systems are often falling short of those expectations. The author describes how many companies have increasingly replaced human support channels with AI-driven chatbots as part of broader cost reduction efforts. While these systems can effectively handle simpler requests, they frequently struggle with more complex or unusual situations. Customers often find themselves trapped in repetitive conversations, receiving irrelevant responses, or being unable to escalate their issue to a human representative in a timely manner. A key concern is that organizations may be prioritizing cost savings over customer satisfaction. By reducing staffing levels and steering customers toward automated systems, companies can lower operating expenses. However, when AI systems lack sufficient context, flexibility, or problem-solving capability, the customer experience can deteriorate rather than improve. The article suggests that many current chatbot deployments remain immature. Although generative AI has made conversational systems more natural and capable, reliability and accuracy remain inconsistent. Customers often judge service quality based not on whether AI is involved, but on whether their problem is actually resolved quickly and effectively. Key takeaways are that many AI-powered customer service systems continue to struggle with complex customer needs. Cost reduction appears to be a major driver of adoption, and customer satisfaction can decline when automation replaces rather than enhances human support. Effective service depends on outcomes, not simply the presence of AI. The implications are important for businesses deploying AI solutions. Organizations that use AI solely to reduce labor costs may risk damaging customer relationships and brand loyalty. The most successful implementations will likely combine AI efficiency, with seamless access to knowledgeable human support when needed. In the long run, customers will reward companies that use AI to improve service quality rather than merely automate interactions. Guru Baran with Cybersecurity News wrote that bots now surpass humans in global web traffic for the first time in internet history. For the first time ever, automated bots have officially overtaken human users in global internet traffic, and the shift is accelerating faster than even industry leaders predicted. So a lot of people online are not even real. They're all these fake bots. So that's kind of scary. Makes you wonder where all the real people went. According to data from Cloudflare Radar, bots now account for 57.5% of all HTTP requests to HTML pages globally, while human-generated traffic has fallen to just 42.5%. The United States paints an even starker picture, with bot traffic commanding a staggering 71.5% share of domestic web requests, underscoring how deeply AI-driven automation has penetrated the world's most connected markets. The crossover is not limited to one data source. The 2025 Imperva Bad Bot report independently confirmed that automated traffic breached the 50% threshold for the first time in a decade, reaching 51% of all global web traffic in 2024. Cloudflare's own network, which serves roughly 1 in 5 websites worldwide, showed the bot-to-human split at approximately 53% versus 47% on HTML requests by the end of 2025. So that's bizarre, guys. I feel like we should have some kind of level of modesty when it comes to AI accounts. Joa Boak with AP News wrote that Trump says that Bill Pulte will not be his nominee for Director of National Intelligence. President Donald Trump said Thursday that federal housing finance regulator Bill Pulte, his pick for acting Director of National Intelligence, would not be his, quote, permanent choice for the critical security post. The Republican president's disclosure that he was ruling out installing Pulte in the position full-time came after bipartisan pushback on Capitol Hill in recent days over Pulte's lack of national security experience. The position requires Senate confirmation, something that lawmakers indicated was unlikely if Pulte were the nominee. He's not going to be permanent because, I don't think he'd want to be permanent, Trump said while taking questions in the Oval Office after an event on coal. He called Pulte a very smart guy and said he may look at past elections that Trump claims without credible evidence were rigged against him. Trump said other candidates were under consideration for nomination of the post. We're interviewing people right now, he said. Pulte, a grandson of the founder of Pulte Group, has been a source of controversy within the administration for his work as director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency and his oversight of the mortgage companies Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. OSINT warfare on IG showed exclusive footage obtained by CNN shows extensive fire damage aboard the aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford, the CVN-78, following a blaze during operations against Iran. The carrier's fire control system failed to function as intended, forcing crew members to manually battle the blaze, and took around 30 hours to fully extinguish and affected accommodations for roughly 600 sailors. Secretary Rubio wrote on his Instagram page that he met with Kuwaiti Foreign Minister Sheikh Jarrah Jaber al-Ahmad al-Sabah to affirm the United States' commitment to the security of Kuwait and all our partners in the Gulf. The United States and Kuwait are unified in our vision of regional stability and an open and free Strait of Hormuz. Kagan Dunlap on Instagram wrote that on Sunday, May 31st, 2026, a joint operation involving U.S. Coast Guard Air Station Miami, U.S. Customs and Border Protection Air and Marine Operations, or CBP-AMO, the Royal Turks and Caicos Islands Police Force, RTC-IPF, and the Turks and Caicos Islands Regiment successfully interdicted interdicted a heavily overloaded vessel carrying 240 migrants approximately 15 miles south of the Turks and Caicos Islands. The vessel was a roughly 45 to 50-foot Haitian wooden Yola with twin outboard engines and was spotted around 2:45 p.m. by a CBP AMO multi-role enforcement aircraft operating out of Jacksonville. It was heading north and already in distress, later losing engine power and beginning to take on water. Coast Guard watchstanders diverted an HC-144 Ocean Sentry aircraft crew from Air Station Miami, which located the dangerously overcrowded boat and guided local Marine units to the scene. RTC-IPF and TCI Regiment vessels, including the patrol vessel James Fulford, arrived on scene, took the migrant vessel in tow, and safely transferred all 240 individuals into custody. So this was an overcrowded boat that had lost its engine power. The Real State of America on Instagram wrote that the Pentagon reportedly reconsiders its missile sale to Germany over security concerns. According to a report from Politico, the U.S. Department of Defense is likely to cancel a planned missile sale to Germany due to concerns that sensitive military technology could potentially be accessed by Russia. The reported decision stems from security considerations surrounding the transfer of advanced missile systems and related technology. U.S. officials are said to be evaluating the risks associated with sharing the technology, particularly amid ongoing geopolitical tensions involving Russia and NATO member states. Germany, a key NATO ally, has worked closely with the United States on defense and security initiatives. However, concerns about safeguarding advanced military capabilities and preventing unauthorized access to sensitive technology appear to be influencing the Pentagon's review of the proposed sale. As of now, no final decision has been officially announced. The reported move remains under consideration, and officials have not publicly confirmed whether the sale will ultimately be canceled. OSINT Defender on IG wrote, According to Bloomberg, the UK and France have almost finished formulating a plan to implement a mine-clearing operation in the Strait of Hormuz, following a potential deal between the US and Iran on a lasting ceasefire. The plan would be a multinational effort and comes following more than a month of multilateral meetings led by both countries. Per the report, citing people familiar with the plan, the operation would include 15 countries committing military personnel and assets to the mission and will maintain direct communication with Iran to deconflict. End Times headlines on IG wrote that eastern Iran is facing a severe agricultural crisis as massive swarms of Moroccan locusts have descended on farmland and pastures across the region, rapidly consuming crops and grazing land. The infestation compounds years of prolonged drought and economic pressures, threatening the livelihoods of rural communities and raising concerns over potential food security challenges in vulnerable provinces. So this is your daily breaking news headlines. Let me know what y'all think in the comments below for all of these different articles. And if you want to learn more, please go and see those articles. A lot of them are very special people that are writing these. And yeah, let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe, and click the notification bell for more updates as we go through each day's process. I hope y'all have a blessed day. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.